6 weeks into Elon Musk's tenure at Twitter, and the chaos is growing by the day. Now the embattled billionaire reportedly can't pay the bills, cannot pay the bills. The New York Times reports that, quote, to cut costs, Twitter has not paid rent for its San Francisco headquarters or any of its global offices for weeks, 3 people close to the company said. Now Twitter is reportedly discussing not paying severance for all those people Musk fired suddenly. The Times also adding this, quote, Twitter's leaders have also discussed the consequences of denying severance payments to thousands of people who have been laid off since the takeover. 2 people familiar with the talk said. This comes amid increasingly erratic behavior from Musk that could have dangerous real-world consequences. And what the Washington Post describes as a move appearing, quote, intended to counter criticism of his early stewardship of Twitter, the number of moderators who are on the lookout for inappropriate content on the social media site has been slashed. And just a few experts on child exploitation remain. Over the weekend, Musk lashing out at Twitter's former head of trust and safety, forcing him to flee his home in fear for his safety. Musk also disbanding Twitter's Trust and Safety Council, the organization founded to keep users safe online. Look, I think we can safely say that the former richest man in the world, getting booed at a Chappelle show and not paying your bills and slashing the staff who keep your $44 billion acquisition functional, maybe he's not playing three-dimensional chess after all. Joining our conversation, Bloomberg News technology reporter Sarah Fryer. Miles is also back with us. Sarah, I'm going to start with this. I never believed that Elon Musk was playing three-dimensional chess, and I like my billionaires, as immoral as they are a reflection of our capitalist system, to be very, very silent. But what the heck is going on there? I mean, like, I know high schoolers that are working night managed shifts at Wendy's that are doing a better job than what this guy appears to be doing. What is the thought process behind some of this decision-making, certainly when it comes to slashing the security and protocols people who are supposed to be overlooking the site?
Look, I think Musk is throwing a lot of spaghetti at the wall right now to see what works, and this is part of his reign. He is reigning in a very chaotic, erratic manner. He is making news every day, and that might be part of the point, right? He is doing shock decisions, whether that's bringing former President Trump back onto the platform, or anti-vaxxers, or criticizing Fauci, or today he banned the person who's been tracking his personal jet as it travels. He is trying every day to make sure that Twitter ends up in the headlines, really taking a lot of oxygen out of a lot of other reporting, and hoping that drives eyeballs. And that's maybe a charitable way of looking at it, that this is somehow strategic, that a lot of these moves are meant to shock us. And then when it comes to paying the bills, look, he has made the overpaying that he did for Twitter, the $44 billion that he spent on the platform, it's now Twitter's problem. Twitter has to assume that debt, and that debt comes in with interest payments worth more than $1.2 billion a year at a variable rate. So this is a really extreme financial burden for the company, and he's been alienating advertisers, and he's changing the business model. So I think that this is just a really troubling time at Twitter. A lot of the former employees we have talked to have been very concerned about the future of the platform. You know, it doesn't sound like he has a very coherent plan.
And I want to follow up with this because, look, I don't know how to run a billion-dollar tech company, right? So I'm not going to make any assumptions here. If it doesn't appear that he has a plan from internal people, are there outside observers who say, hey, look, this is normal chaos. We're just hearing about it because Elon Musk likes being in public. But this is how a lot of these acquisitions work, and in 18 months, we're not going to be thinking about it. Are there outside people who are nominally objective who see this as just being a rough start and that eventually this will clean itself up?
Well, I wouldn't call him objective, but former CEO Jack Dorsey penned a blog post yesterday saying that he's been supportive of some of the new things that Musk is trying, among them trying to fix this idea that Twitter has too much control over content. But, you know, then he goes today and bans the account tracking his personal jet. So I think that, you know, what we've heard over and over from our sources, people want to give him the benefit of the doubt. He can be charming. He can give he has good ideas. ideas. He has good questions. When you're in person with Musk, he can bring you along for the ride and make you believe that it's going to work out. And then he goes and tweets something, and everything seems to be set aflame. So I think that is really the contrast we're seeing. We described it in Business Week today as Shakespearean. I mean, this is really just like a cult of personality around this guy. He's alienating some. He's driving other supporters on the right, especially. And I think that the result of it is just a constant whiplash for everyone involved, including those who he owes money to.
Miles, from an outside branding perspective, Elon Musk has gone from being, Tony Stark to probably Kendall Roy at this point, as far as how people look at him.
If that.
Kendall at least had a certain amount of charm. But the other thing is, he seems to be turning the site. Look, lots of people always said, Twitter's a hell site, this, that, the other. But the amplification of problematic people who were kicked off because they were abusive to everybody in the club, because they were doxing people, because of the fact that now we're seeing more and more weird gambling, ads and things like that. From a branding and a political perspective, how dangerous is it that Elon is now sticking his thumb on the scale and amplifying problematic beliefs and people on still the biggest public forum on the planet?
Well, look, I'm going to caveat this by saying, lifelong conservative with a small c. I'm all for the free market. It's a private business now. He can drive the thing into the ground if he wants to. But I also want to give you the national security perspective, right? Because after I left government, I went and ran national security relations and policy over at Google. And I worked with a lot of these trust and safety people that Elon Musk has fired. Mm-hmm. And let me tell you, these folks are mission critical. Even if you're an American who's not on Twitter and you're just watching this and laughing at this dumpster fire, this affects you. And here's why. Because foreign adversaries actively manipulate this platform to start debates to warp American politics. This is actually happening. This isn't a fantasy. It's not a, it's a nightmare, not a fantasy, but they're actually, Russia, China, these other nation states, Iran, are manipulating that platform to manipulate our political system. So it's a concern for everyone. Even if you've already left Twitter,
there were actual Saudi spies
who
were
and this idea, and I never
embedded.
believed that Twitter isn't real life. We know that's not true, right? Otherwise, he doesn't get booed on stage, right? But I think the other thing to take into consideration is, how does that manifest itself, right? You have people who say, well, they're starting these fake conversations. We don't know what to do with these fake conversations. How have we seen that manifest itself? Is it just QAnon? Is it just attacks on January 6th? Like, what are some examples of how Twitter can be manipulated to have real-world negative consequences?
Well, we saw it in 2016. We saw it with the Russians actively going and trying to get people to go to in-person protests where they were going to be in contentious disagreements with people on the other side, trying to inflame racial tension in the United States so it can jump the tracks from virtual to violent and real world very, very quickly. Now, I don't know if we've seen too many specific examples of that yet, but it's also tough to understand because Elon Musk is saying one thing to the users and another thing to advertisers. That's what I'm really frustrated about. I used to love Elon Musk, but now he's telling the users, unlimited free speech, go crazy. And then he's turning and saying to the advertisers, no, don't worry, trust and safety, we're going to protect this platform. So I don't think we quite know what he's actually doing with this yet. So if there was one piece of branding advice I would have, it would be to people outside of Twitter, now's a really good time to go start a competitor to Twitter and go raise money in the marketplace because the users want out and they want somewhere that's safer, better, and more civil.
We're trying to brand Miles as the Ryan Reynolds lookalike. So that's the other Twitter branding that we're trying to do here. Sarah, I just want to ask you this, because this is something I think also affects journalism. I'm a journalism professor at Morgan State University. Lots of young people who are getting into this business, are saying to themselves, hey, without Twitter, how do I do journalism, right? If you're 18, 19 years old, you grew up going to places saying, hey, I have to build a following. This is how I go for research. What's the impact of this sort of dissolution of Twitter as a reliable space on the ability of people to conduct journalism? I think right now I'm learning about the sort of Peruvian protests by, Peru Resiste. I find out information all over the world on Twitter. If this is no longer a safe space from an informational standpoint, how does that affect journalism?
Well, I think you really have to be upping your ability to verify everything that you hear, especially as we know that those verification badges that are currently on government accounts, public official accounts, are going away within a few months, according to Elon, though his mind could change. So I think that, this is a principle, as you know, in journalism: trust but verify. Make sure that the information that you're getting is solid. Don't just repeat things that you see on the internet, even if you think that this person has a lot of followers. It doesn't mean that they are the most verifiable source of information. Rely on public records, rely on documents, internal documents if you must, because this is a company, just from a perspective of somebody who's covering Twitter, we have to rely on sources now. Twitter no longer has a communications team. So I think that this is one of those moments where if somebody says, yeah, there are more users on Twitter, or this is happening or that's happening, you really have to find people who have witnessed it and who know what's really going on. I think it makes the job harder. It makes the promotional job harder too, because a lot of journalists have relied on Twitter to build the echo chamber of people who will also respond to their reporting. But listen, there are other platforms for that, right? There's Instagram, there's LinkedIn, there's a lot of journalists on TikTok now. So I think that it really is just, go back to first principles of journalism and make sure that when you write something that you have done as much as you can to verify it.
So we're going back to old school journalism. That's probably a good thing. Sarah Frier, thank you so much for spending some time with us today on Deadline White House.